the transmission. Yes. Okay. So we're live now. So we're just, it's barely time. So we'll just have. Sometimes these are people who are like returning from lunch or something. So I'm going to ask you to please bear with us, and they're going to start jumping in. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Where are you located, Robert, if I may ask?
Just outside of Austin, Texas.
Okay. Well, there's people. Hold on one second. I'm on Skype, and my folks are telling me to. Wondering. Hold on. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The first time that I broadcast, so it's a little strange because I'm listening to myself.
Right. You get the feedback.
Yeah. Hold on. Okay. People are on Skype. Yes. There. Why am I listening to myself? Okay. Cool. Can you hear anything, Robert?
I just hear you. I don't hear anything else.
Okay. It's weird. It's just that. Okay. Okay, we have, right now we have 6 people. What? Hold on one second, Robert. Okay. All right, we're the people here at starting to join the first ever Dojo Live. And for those of you who are already here online, we have Robert Graham. And I already shared some information about Robert, but I'd like to introduce him real quick. Just give me a minute. Everyone, this is for everyone. Please, 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 I'm going to ask you, well, you know who I am, so please bear with me, because it's like this is the first time that I broadcast, and I just had a crash course on this. So, okay, let's see. Just give me a minute, please, and we'll be all set. Thank you, Robert, again for your patience and for bearing with me.
Okay.
And thank you, and thank you, my team, because they're a whole bunch of sweethearts. Okay, yeah. Well, like I said, we have Robert Graham. He's a business hacker at PollEverywhere. I like the term business hacker, Robert. So maybe you could elaborate a little bit on that. Okay. He spent time at Google and Oracle as a software engineer, and after working on a computer science PhD. And he has published research in the field of human-computer interaction and information retrieval. And also, he currently does growth work for a YC startup and PollEverywhere, while building up his own software as a service business, which is right on the spot. Keepify. He has 2 previous products and he wrote a book called Calling Early Customers to help individuals with technical backgrounds get started with sales, which is going to drive us into the subject matter of the day, which is precisely closing the gap, like we talked about in the past and written about in the past. So from this point on, Robert, they're all yours, and please introduce yourself and you do your thing. And everyone, Q&A, we have a Q&A section right there whenever Robert's done, or ping me on Skype if there's something you want to say. also, and I'll be on the lookout for your communications. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. So, Robert, you're all yours.
All right. Thanks, Carlos.
Sure.
So yeah, like he said, my name's Robert. I've done all the things that he mentioned, and I guess I'm going to talk a little bit about where I come from and just in terms of perspectives and career and skills. So I've done everything from work on network security appliances and nuclear submarine sonars to web applications, and then all the way to cold calling. So today I just want to share a little bit about how I went from being an engineer to doing something like cold calling people to sell my own product, and what does it look like to get to that point. So I kind of got a bug where I wanted to build my own things, and um, I just kind of spun in circles for a while. Like I would say I was going to do it, or I'd start a partnership, and it wouldn't go anywhere. And eventually, it just kind of occurred to me, that there wasn't, like Derek Sivers says, there's not really a speed limit. There's nothing stopping you from doing it. And I started getting up early, and I got some momentum, and I built a product that I called Whitetail Scout and Whitetail Census. When I built those, I didn't know much about marketing. I didn't know much about sales. I really thought that it's funny because I had heard a million times that like if you build it, they will come is not true at all for products, and I knew that intellectually, but I don't think I really believed it. So I built these products more because I thought they were technically interesting than because I think they were like a smart business move. And the technically interesting part was building image recognition stuff through Mechanical Turk. Especially in the early days, you need a lot of infrastructure to get that kind of thing done. So I had a lot of fun doing that, but then it came time, I was really worried that I wasn't going to make very much money with the product, uh, but I didn't want, another product to kind of go down in flames and not make it into the wild. So I released it, and I tried to sell it online. I tried to blog. I tried advertising online with AdWords. I tried lots of different things. Those were all really comfortable because I didn't have to talk to people. I didn't have to do things like call. And finally, I kind of ran into a wall. I only had a couple of customers. I wasn't making very much money. That was pretty frustrating. And I decided that I wasn't going to give up. And I was going to try everything that I could try. So I think I bought a spot um, at a big national convention. Spent a couple $1,000s. Brought a friend of mine with me who was in sales, and we tried to sell this thing. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Jeff Foxworthy, but I ended up having a booth across from him selling. I think he was selling some kind of like grills or crockery or something like that at this big wildlife convention. And even at the at the convention, I still was kind of scared to talk to people in the way that I think would have been most productive, and I didn't use some of my engineering skills and just basic life skills of like setting goals and really attacking the goals, because I think I was afraid to put myself out there with the people. I just wasn't comfortable, hawking things to people or asking people questions as they walked by. Qualifying leads and approaching people was just pretty intimidating for me at the time. But I slowly warmed up to it. By the end of the last day, some talks with the guy that I brought with me, and he really helped a lot. He had done door-to-door security sales, and so we set goals and we started, trying different phrases to get attention and trying to start conversations. And some of those conversations, didn't go so well. But really, the thing that I learned doing them was that the downside was usually just a polite no thanks, or somebody would walk away. And I didn't make a lot of money off the convention, but I think I gained enough confidence to try some other things. And finally, when I got back, I decided to try cold calling. And my idea with cold calling first was just to try to get people to talk to me in any way that I could. And I had trouble getting them to tell me anything. And just I would, beg as a struggling entrepreneur to get them to say anything, or tell them all about what I was trying to do, thinking they would be interested. And finally, I stumbled on the idea of offering them something instead of asking for something. So I started asking these wildlife managers and property owners if I could come out to their properties and look around and talk to them and interview them and then post that online. And that would serve as some free marketing for them uh, in the space, and they could get some recognition. And it gave me a way to actually get to talk to these people. So suddenly I was in front of customers, and I could actually get in front of some of the best customers because I was really offering them a chance to do something. And the more customers I got on the blog and could point to, the more interested people were in what I was doing and in being themselves on the blog. And really, the more momentum I got in speaking with people and having some success with it, the less afraid I was of the potential rejection or any other problems. So, I don't know that it ever became fun to cold call, but it definitely became manageable. And I think some of the ways, like from an engineering background, I learned to look at it was just less in terms of the calls and the conversations and stuff, and more in terms of numbers games. I like you could start the day and put 100 pennies on the table and take one off every time you made a call, and you just think about the pennies like you're looking for 100 rejections instead of hoping that each one is a success. And if you get 100 rejections, then you know roughly what you're going to end up with in terms of successes anyway after you've done it for a while. So uh, looking at it from an engineer's perspective of just optimizing problems and numbers and things, I think helped a lot and just getting some momentum there. And it helped me. I think it also helped me from an engineering background have a lot more appreciation for how creative and hardworking you need to be in sales and marketing. Um, and I think, one of the other things that came out of it for me, uh, I was really into military history when I was a kid, and you learn essentially you always want to attack where someone is weak. And when China built the Great Wall, nobody ever actually stormed the wall and went over it. They always bribed the guards. That was the only way through. When the French built the Maginot Line in France, the Germans opted to go through the impossible terrain of the Ardennes Forest instead of through the defensive line. So it's considered impossible to get tanks through that forest, but that's what they opted to do instead. Um, you know, when when the Americans invaded Normandy at midnight, they dropped paratroopers around an area called Pointe du Hoc. There were 150-foot cliffs in that area. There were big storms in the summer. The North Atlantic was really difficult. Getting people to land there in that time and place was just extremely hazardous. Nobody thought that was even a possibility, and they needed to seize that particular location because of the guns that were stationed there. And so the Germans considered it impossible to land people there and attack. So that's where they put the guns there. And just turns out that the creativity of overcoming those weaknesses and being adaptable and looking for opportunity is incredibly powerful. And that's true in engineering as well as when you get into sales and marketing. So I'll talk for a second about what kind of selling I did, and what I learned. I mentioned that I got into cold calling for this product, and that was pretty successful. And I think the main lessons I learned were that I needed to know the customer. So you can have pretty warm leads. If you have relationships with people, they'll recommend people to you, and knowing exactly what you're looking for in a customer, what your ideal customer looks like, that makes a big difference in marketing as well as in engineering. When you know more about who your customer is for a product, you can build a better product. And when you know more about who your customer is as a marketer, you know where they hang out, you know what they look like, you know what kind of things they're interested in, you know what you should talk about, you know how to warm them up, you know what kind of things they worry about at night. And when you can do that, it gives you a big advantage when you can start a conversation and the people feel like you're really interested in them and what they have to say and what they think, where they're coming from. You can have a much more powerful conversation than if you just sort of blindly send hundreds or thousands of emails to as many people as you can find that might have some sort of weak link to the types of things that you're doing. So that was a pretty powerful lesson, was just starting with having a good idea, a very solid, concrete idea of who you're trying to talk to and who is going to make you successful and who you can make successful. Because really, that's what business is about. It's a two-way street where if you don't have something to offer to make someone else successful, then there's really not something interesting about the relationship. So after you know your customer and you don't rush that whole thing, and you're able to research that a lot of different ways, then you really need to figure out how to find them, find a channel. So there's a lot of ways to do that. It really depends on types of customers, but these days with the internet, it's a great place to start. And usually there's professional organizations, there's all kinds of different groups, and LinkedIn, Facebook. It's just really powerful place to find people. There are blogs, there's podcasts. Whether you want to advertise or not, you can usually find people hanging out on Twitter. You can find groups that do things like this particular chat, and those are all like big opportunities when you know who your customer is and you know that they're going to be in a place like that. Um, and then once you find those places, you just need to use them as channels to connect to people. Um, and those channels, they might be advertising, but a lot of times, in my experience, it's a lot more powerful to find a way to build deeper relationships. And in a business context, for me, I always really liked Chet Holmes, who wrote a book called The Ultimate Sales Machine. He's got a lot of really great ideas in there. And one of them is just having a dream list of customers and trying to build relationships with 100 dream customers, and just focusing on being creative and building relationships over however much time it takes to make sure that you have those customers and that they like you and they trust you and they like your products and really believe in what you're doing. And even when it takes years to develop some of those relationships, it's really valuable because when you've identified your customers and what makes that important, you can really target who would be most interesting and who would attract other people to your business. And that idea of relationships as channels, I think, is pretty powerful. There's a cool book about Samuel Zemurray and the history of the United Fruit Company. Um, they did a lot of terrible things, but one of the really interesting things toward the end of the company, Zemurray hired a PR guy, and the PR guy in particular, I can't remember his name, but he's sort of the father of the idea that in the world and in any kind of like sphere of influence, there's only a few people that influence what everyone else thinks. And so the way to attack that problem is actually just to do whatever you can to appeal to those people. And when you get their attention, you can actually shift public perspective entirely on a given issue. And he was able to do that in lots of different ways and attack problems in really creative ways that no one had really thought of before. Um, I think one of the products he wanted to sell, instead of trying to sell it directly or trying to put it in a store, he actually convinced home builders. I think it was some kind of home appliance like a dishwasher. So instead of doing something like putting it in Sears, he convinced home builders that it was critical that they install it when they built the home. And so he drove sales that way and just created this feel like everybody needs this. It's just part of having a home. And so that kind of thinking for channels is really what does it for me. And I always want to, go along with offering real value to those people, even to start the relationship. Like I mentioned, I would do these interviews and blog about them and have interesting conversations where I could post their content and take pictures. And it was something that they were interested in because it was free promotion. And it also created a place where people in that marketplace could connect and look at other things that people were doing and best practices in their own industry. So a lot like this, I mean, just a cool open exchange of ideas, interesting people, just being able to cross-pollinate. I think cross-pollination between fields is just really powerful. It's where some of the biggest breakthroughs have come everywhere. And then lastly, on my sort of list of things that I learned that I took to heart was that the specific is always better and more important than the general. And this is like really across all types of things. So in scripts that you use for cold calling, it's true. So if I were to use the phrase "talk about your business," that's really general, and it doesn't connect. It doesn't feel like you know somebody. But if you say talk about your ebook, or how do you market your ebook, or how do you compare marketing your ebook on Amazon to the iBook store, what are the best long tail SEO keywords for your ebook on tying flies, if someone was writing a fly fishing book. Those types of specific things in language mean a lot to people, and it makes things really personal. But being specific, it also works in a personal context to build trust. So one of the things I found is if you're writing a script, or you're just trying to set up contact with somebody in a relationship, it goes a long way if instead of sending something that says, "Hey, can we meet up next week?" you say, "Hey, I'd love to meet up. Does next Wednesday at 3 p.m. sound good to you? We can meet at such and such coffee shop, or we can connect on Skype." That level of specificity, not only does it remove some decisions and some friction from the process for the other person, but it's a clear call to action that's more likely to get them to do what you're interested in them doing. And it just makes it generally easier for them to do it. Even if they can't do it at that time, it's obvious that they should sort of return in kind and say, "Oh, I can't do Wednesday at 3, but we can meet for breakfast," or something along those lines. So I think specificity in those types of contexts actually breeds the same. And yeah, I think one other thing engineers get scared of in sales and in marketing processes is you can make claims that you don't fully back up, and you get afraid of doing that. And I do think it's really important to present yourself in the best light, but you do want to make sure that you never sell yourself as something that you're not, or sell yourself as more than you are. And I found that working in the software world and in the Silicon Valley world, that people really see through that, but that the best customers and the best people that I interact with are also some of the most realistic, and they have some grounded expectations. So when you present them with specific honesty, and you present yourself as you are, even if sometimes that's someone that's struggling, or just someone that's working hard, not necessarily someone that's the best at everything, I think you get a lot more traction out of that, as people really like to connect with that kind of humanity. That's something that's appealing. That's just another place where I feel like specificity is a lot greater than generality. So I have lots of other things that I could get to, but if we have some Q&A, then I'd really be interested in addressing questions, Carlos.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to ask the people who are joins us today to come up with the questions. I do have a question for you, if I may.
Mm-hmm.
And while the rest of my people here just give it some thought about what they'd like to ask you, but I think you're in a unique position in the industry because of your two areas, your two the two streams that you have followed, engineering and sales, and the sales part, okay? And from that particular position, you have a deep knowledge of what it takes in order to get a product out to market. But you also mentioned something that I consider that is key, especially in the Silicon Valley world and in the startup world and everything that has to do with technology. You mentioned something that pulled my attention: realistic. Okay, so some of the people here who are attending this session might be involved in, for example, research and development and new products, because we do have an R&D area. So in terms of being realistic, I mean, there's a lot of, I have seen a lot of people who have, the next Facebook in mind. It's, oh, I'm going to eat up the world or whatever.
Right.
So in terms of being realistic, where do you think we could strike a balance between our dreams and expectations and the market itself and the market trends in the Silicon Valley world? What's your view on that?
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, specifically the way I was speaking about customers and clients and people in Silicon Valley being realistic, I meant um, especially that they know how difficult it is to get a business off the ground, how difficult it is to engineer a great product or do a great job at sales, because they have that experience. So I think that kind of realism is common. But I think, I kind of feel two ways about what you're saying as far as the market trends and realism and products and ideas and things, because
Mm-hmm.
for myself, I have an idea of the type of life I want to live and the type of, means or business that would support that, not just life, but also lifestyle. And when I say lifestyle, I don't necessarily mean financial. I have
Mm-hmm.
kids, and
Yeah.
I'm speaking as much about what I do with my time as I am about money and financial aspects of business.
Mm-hmm.
Also about what kind of businesses support you being excited about going to work or being happy when realistically you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
stuck doing some tasks that you don't really want to do every day. So I think that for me plays a lot. Um, but I guess I also don't have any illusions about. I don't think that mindset is the type of thing that's going to change the world. I mean, some of the people that have really big ideas and really want to pursue them and have that ambition, there are a lot of examples you could throw out there. But maybe someone like Elon Musk, who puts all his chips on the table over and over again to go for these big ideas in pursuit of something even bigger. I have a lot of respect for that. It's not for me, but I don't think it doesn't have a place. Um, though I do think in terms of realism, those ideas have a place and that ambition has a place. But if you're going to get there, if you want to build the next Facebook, if you want to build SpaceX, then I think there are some milestones that you have to sort of check off along the way. I don't think there are very many people that build $100 million businesses that have never built, $1,000 business or made, their first dollar at a lemonade stand.
Mm-hmm.
I do think you have to take some steps in the direction and sort of progress up to something like that. It's not an easy leap to make. So if you want to make the next Facebook, your first move might not be trying to make the next Facebook.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? Okay. Also, well, first of all, I'd like to pause here for a second and ask the people, the attendees, if you have any questions. Please, by all means, I encourage you to share them with us here in the question bar. So, guys, ask away. And while we're here, so I don't see any questions yet, which would lead me into myself asking you something else, which is more like a request, considering all things considered, like engineering, sales, and such. And this is something like a big topic that we discussed many times in many venues, in many occasions. What do you think? What is your in the software world? What is your definition of innovation? I mean, especially in the software product realm. What do you think about innovation, or what is your definition of innovation here,
Right.
Robert?
Um, it would probably be something simple, something like making something that's difficult easy.
Okay, making something that is difficult easy. Okay, that makes sense. So there's a lot of sometimes we feel, and like I said, we have discussed this many times, there are like misconceptions of what innovation is in the software world, and a lot of people think,
Right.
hey, you got to come up with the next cool product out there, and so you're thinking, oh, I'm going to innovate, we're going to create something nice or interesting. So in there, the misconception comes when a lot of many people think or mistake the term innovation with creation of something that did not exist in the past.
Right.
And so, what, from your standpoint, what would be like the major, I mean, the major difference between innovation and creation of a product?
Right. I think the innovative part doesn't necessarily even have to be product related.
Mm-hmm.
I would give an example. It's not really in the software world, but something that's completely changed the world, totally changed world trade, changed economics globally,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and it's not anything that any of us would think of as technology. It's a metal box.
Mm-hmm.
Containers and container ships completely changed how the world economy works. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a great example of you took something that was very difficult, loading ships, unloading ships, using tons of man hours and labor and blood and sweat to accomplish something, and you made it really easy, and you made it a lot faster, and it changed all types of opportunities for people and for economic progress. Um, so I think that's a reasonable example. I think people in the software industry, like you're saying, they can fall in love with the idea of creation and especially technology being the solution to every problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think sometimes, and there are some technology plays out there right now, even in Silicon Valley, that are getting really large, where they use technology, but in a lot of ways, it's not necessarily a technology business.
Mm-hmm.
Like the business idea doesn't necessarily tie back to the interesting technologies that they use or how they use them. Um, you could make a lot of examples. Uber might be one. So they have some good technology, but they made something that was difficult and frustrating easy. So I would
Mm-hmm.
I would argue in a lot of ways their innovation is more, making transportation a solved problem, and not some of the interesting technological innovations that they may or may not even have made.
It's just that I just heard you say Uber, and something came to my mind, which is very relevant because actually, especially here where I personally am, Mexico City, you might have a product like Uber, for example. Okay, so it's a great idea, and it has reeled in tons of cash for the company and such. However, there are other considerations, like cultural considerations, for example. Let me explain. And this is where you might be able to give me your view on this. You take a product like Uber, and then you take it to, let's say, Los Angeles or New York, and then you also take it to Mexico City or to Bangalore or to Paris, where the cultures that are embracing these technologies and these platforms are different to the ones where to the ones in the country where they originated in. In this case,
Right.
the U.S. Right. Let me just give you a quick example. Here in Mexico City, there's Uber. There's a lot of people who are making money, and so it's working. But then you have, on the other hand, the social part, the social component, which is the reaction to Uber, because the cab drivers, the traditional cab drivers, are facing a lot of problems.
Right.
Not problems. They are opposing the idea. Okay, so where does if you have this great idea, which is Uber, it's a platform, how do you overcome that particular element, which is the cultural frictions, especially if you're thinking about localizing a product into other cultures?
Right.
You think, how would you overcome? Let's say if you personally have an idea of a great platform, a great software product, and you want to take it to elsewhere in the world, like New Zealand or India or whatever, you might face cultural problems. How do you think that can be overcome in order to make it profitable?
Right. So I guess the best solution for most problems that I can think of that involve customer expectations, and I think this works at a cultural level as well as an individual level, uh, are as much specific knowledge as you can acquire. And the best way to acquire specific knowledge about customers is usually just to talk to them. So I think I would I would talk to people before I started it, before I moved the business, before I put it in front of people.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to as many people that were part of that culture as I could. I might hire somebody from that culture to sort of be a liaison and help me understand the types of problems I might run into, the types of pitfalls. There's a lot of different potential misunderstandings between cultures that you could get in front of that way. And then as you roll it out, I think it would be really important to maybe bring some of your people, even your engineers, along and take them. So if you're Uber, you could ride along with some of the Uber drivers for a day, or make sure that you had some interviews with people who used Uber in some of those cultures to get a sense of what they thought of it, how they perceived it relative to taxis or to whatever your competition happened to be. And I think that would give you the information that you needed to make the best decision to compete in a marketplace that you might not understand before.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Okay, guys, questions? I don't see. I still excuse me. I still don't see any questions yet. So we still have some time. Guys, please, if you have any questions, I encourage you to share them with us. And I mean, you can do it either today or some other time at your convenience. So, okay. I don't see any questions. So, okay. Well, Robert, we're about to wrap this up. So if I ask you to please give some piece of advice to the crowd here, software engineers who are working for Silicon Valley companies, or working with, not for, because the concept is we're part of their team, right? It's for part of the team. We're not like warm bodies sitting there cranking out code. So we're part of their team. And what type of, if in generally speaking, and you being in the industry, what type of advice would you give them in order to stay on top of the game?
Yeah, I think in software it's pretty important to just never stop moving. You always need to be learning and making an effort to expose yourself to things that are new, that are coming out, that are interesting, and stay ahead of that kind of thing and keep yourself sharp. But I also think it can be pretty powerful to just work on some of your own passions in your own time. I think that's a good way to learn technologies you're not familiar with. It's a good way to stretch yourself, and just I don't know, just keep in mind that there is no speed limit, and like whatever you want to learn or achieve, you just kind of have to put in the hours and give it a shot. And forgive yourself if you don't wake up early one day and get it done, but dust yourself off the next day or late that night and just go out and do it.
Okay, there's someone here. We have Matt Perez, our company CEO, he's wondering where he's supposed to type in the questions. It's a good. Matt, I think you're listening, so please bear with me. This, like I said, this is the first time I stream, so I see the application here, which is it reads Q&A, and it says ask the audience to ask questions. They will appear below, so I should see any. I was assuming that they were going to appear in there, but okay. He says, I'm guessing that in the setup, it wasn't set up for questions. Well, yeah, I mean, as far as I know, yes. I mean, that's because I can see the application right here, and it says Q&A. So anyway, there might be something else that I need to tweak in. But Matt, please, by all means, if you're listening, I have you on Skype, Matt. So just type in the question here in Skype. Okay, yeah, he's right there. Okay, it's just okay. He's typing, and the person who's asking is again is Mr. Matt Perez. He's Nearsoft's COO. Okay, he says he came in late, so yeah, he was. He told me that he was going to be joining a little late. He was wondering what his experience has been. Okay, he's typing the questions. Okay, Matt. Hold on one second, Robert. He's
Oh, no
typing
problem.
the question on Skype. Oh, okay, yeah. It's just that I have people from Nearsoft. They're wondering. They're asking, "How can I make questions?" And it seems like they don't see where to type in. But we're using Skype, so I'll just share them here. So, folks, please just share them on Skype, and I'll be more than happy to share them with Robert, and then you'll be able to listen to him answer the question. Okay. All right, guys. So ask away. We don't want to use up the allotted time that we have with Robert. I know he's a busy guy, so please take advantage of him while he's here. Okay. Rene, we have Rene Morales, one of the guys here in Nearsoft. What's your question, Rene or Matt? Okay, Matt says he's wondering what your experience has been. And, well, I already gave some intro information, so. But Robert, if you can just tell or respond to Matt what your experience has been and where you come from.
Yeah, sure. So I did a bachelor's in computer science at Georgia Tech. Got interested in research, pursued a PhD at Texas A&M in information retrieval and human-computer interaction. Published some research mostly around automated tagging systems, kind of combine those two things. Ended up kind of writing that to some work at Google. Started with an internship there, did some work at Google in New York City, did some work on nuclear submarines and network security appliances along the way. Got interested in building my own businesses, did a wildlife management company somewhere in the middle of all that. And then just stayed connected with the community of people that there's a conference called MicroConf that's kind of for people that are interested in building small businesses, and I've been connected to that for several years, and started another business, Keepify. Wrote a book about cold calling from all the cold calling experiences I had in the wildlife management business. Today I'm doing some growth work, which is kind of software combined with marketing for a YC startup, PollEverywhere. And then also working on Keepify, which is it's kind of like customer retention and analytics for software as a service.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, actually, because as you were talking, Matt further elaborated on his question, his question, and he was wondering what your experience with startups in particular was. Okay, but I think you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you covered it real nicely. Unless you want to add something, of course.
No, I think I maybe outlined too much, but I think I got it.
Okay, yeah. And also, there's something else that we have that's something that you might want to keep an eye on, Robert. And this is, I'm going to send you information about that. We have something that's called a UX clinic, which is you submit, for example, an application or a website or something, and then we have our UX team evaluate it and assess it and just give you recommendations and such, so on and so forth. And it's conducted pretty much like in the same format on air. So I just thought I would bring it up, and then I'll just send you the link so you can see it, what it is. You might want to submit some of your projects to us, and then it's something that has been very appealing to a lot of companies that have been benefit from this. Anyway, all right, so let's see. Okay, guys, anything else? Do we have any other questions? Rene, you were going to ask a question? Because we're about to wrap up the session, so please Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Matt is reminding me that the UX guys, the UX team, they do like a full UX study on the apps or the websites or
Okay,
the platform. So anyway, I'll send you the link so you
that's
can
cool.
see it at your convenience.
One of the things of that conference that's really popular is a similar thing where UX experts and marketing experts do like
Mhm.
live teardowns of sites
Mhm.
and products. So
Yeah, okay,
that's cool.
excellent. All right, well, it seems like we don't have any more questions, so we're going to close it now. I really want to thank you. Thank you, Robert, for having shared your expertise and your experience with us. We'll make sure to you can email me or Skype me or something. Like I said, your postal address, so we can send you some tokens of our appreciation. And we'll look forward to having you as a guest sometime again in the future. And I'll just keep an eye on what we're doing. Thank you for being part of this initiative, which is like a starting point of other things that we're working on. I'll keep you posted on that. And again, thank you so much, Robert. We appreciate it on behalf of myself and my co-workers and friends at Nearsoft. All right?
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. We really appreciate the opportunity. Hope I was able to help. And
Yeah, you
lastly,
did.
if anybody is interested in the book, uh, just send me an email, robert@keepify.com, and I'll get you a free copy. You can check it
Sure.
out.
Okay, give me your address. I can share with everybody here.
Okay, it's robert@keepify.com.
Robert at it's Robert
KEEPIFY.com.
fly.com. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So all right, there it is. I just shared it with everybody at the company, and and do you have a link or an URL you'd like to share as well?
It's coldcallingbook.net. But if they're interested in the book, then they should just send me an email and I'll set them up with a copy.
All right, sure. All right, guys. Well, you heard him. So you have the address. Email Robert, and you can be in touch directly with him. Again, thank you, Robert, so much. We'll look forward to having you again in the future.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate
All
it.
right, I appreciate it. Good. Here's a cheers from Mexico City. It's beer. It's beer time.
Hey, we're playing football or soccer here pretty soon, right?
I'm sorry.
The national teams are playing soccer in a couple days, right? Or maybe a week or two.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I think that I'm not a soccer fan myself, to be honest. So they kind of stare at me because I'm not, right? But I mean, soccer is big. It's a big thing here. So yeah, there's a lot of going on in that regard. You're into soccer?
A little bit. Mostly I follow like World Cup type stuff.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. There's something going on. I'll see what I can find and share it with you as well as far as soccer is concerned. All right, Robert. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye bye.